Shortly before Raiders came out, I asked you guys for your hot takes on the series. Now it's been out for a bit, so let's see what our opinions are on the actual game. The most upvoted comment I got said the 3 King Salmonids should have been in Splatoon Raiders, even if they were additionally secret bosses you could fight after the main story. Personally, I agree with this, but more that it should have just been extra content after the story. I think before it would feel recycled and kinda cheap. Afterward it would be interesting. But I really think this should just be one fight where you go against all 3 of them just to see how that fight would be different with your full toolkit, but you know, not having any teammates. I don't really mind that they're not in the game though. They were in Salmon Run plenty, so I feel like I still got a good amount out of those fights and don't mind having different ones. But again, as extra content, it would have been fun for sure. I think they should have scaled difficulty differently. The game feels the same throughout, doing 1 million damage and 100 damage the same as you progress. Only the numbers change, not the gameplay. I mean, not exactly. I don't really agree with this because as you get further into the game, you fight different salmonids, different bosses, and waves become more complex. It definitely is different between the first few levels and the last few levels. That's why there can be different versions of raids. At the same time, does part of the gameplay come down to the fact that there's a lot more damage that you're able to do? Well, yeah, but I think that's also kind of the point. You're supposed to level up through your toolkit and the way you fight enemies, while the enemies just get more numerous and have larger health pools. That's kind of just part of this type of game. Could there have been more variety that they added as the game progressed, like more salmonid enemies? Maybe. I think that could have been iterated more by having a variety of stage design, and that's where I draw a bit of my critiques. But I think to some extent this is just kind of how this type of game is. So, I don't know. I don't really have an issue with it, but I do kind of get where they're coming from. I think after Bottomless Floor 100, it should have been a survival test of how far you can go until you lose, rather than what we have right now. I mean, I don't agree with this, because currently people can go up to like floor 900 something, so I don't know how long that would have taken. But regardless, when it comes to something like, I wish it was like this instead of this, is, okay, I wish both were options. It'd be cool if you could queue and just play floors infinitely until you lose, and it would just scale that way. You'd have to have the difficulty scale faster, but I could see that being a different mode. I just don't think that needs to replace the bottomless mode we have right now. I think the biggest issue Raiders brought to the series now is if the next game has Salmon Run and is revealed to carry over nothing from Raiders, people are going to lose interest in it. I mean, yeah, I think Salmon Run is going to have to carry some stuff from Raiders. It can't be Raiders, but I don't think you can have something like, oh, your sub-weapon is now only the Splat Bomb and nothing else after people got used to having 15 varieties of gadgets. But you know what? I think that's fine. I am a bit of a proponent that Splatoon 4 needs to make a bit larger changes to the series, and while Salmon Run is a lot better in Splatoon 3 than Splatoon 2, I think the type of changes Raiders has inspired for it would be great to do. Again, it doesn't need to have everything that Raiders has. Raiders is a spin-off for a reason, but I think a lot of the enhancements in Raiders could transfer over, and I would like to see that. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think it's good that the devs are kind of being forced into the direction of making it more interesting and adding more things to it. The game should have used more mechanics from special waves. Obviously, they would have to be reworked, but there being no grillers, mothership, or mudmouse. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with this. Well, sort of. I think grillers could have been an interesting enemy with how they function in this game, but I don't really think there needs to be a bunch of references to Salmon Run because, and I have to get this out of the way, despite having the same enemies, Salmon Run and Raiders are different games. The way they function are very different, and the whole point of Night Waves revolves heavily around core Salmon Run gameplay. I don't think Mothership would have been particularly interesting to fight in Raiders, for instance. I don't think everything that was in Salmon Run needs to be referenced. It's the same thing when I see people say where the grizzco weapons are at. Could they have been in the game as a bit of extra content? Could you have made them work somehow? Sure, I guess. I just don't know if that's the best use of developer resources over something else. And I'm kind of okay that some content is only for Salmon Run, and eventually when we get Salmon Run in Splatoon 4, I'm sure there will be some things from Raiders that don't transfer over. That's okay, they're different modes. The weapon variant system is a cool idea, but is implemented horribly. They don't change anything about how they play, and there's a clear best weapon type. I saw a similar take later down the line that the lack of main weapon variety is a big problem in the game, and I've thought about it for quite a bit. I do like the weapon variation system to some extent when you're leveling up, but at a certain point, yeah, there is just better versions of whatever weapon you are trying to use, and also, yeah, there isn't that much main weapon variety in this game. Personally, I would have preferred a bit of a middle ground, where there are still weapon variants, but not as much of them, and in exchange we get a few more main weapons. I would have preferred if every weapon class had at least 2 different versions, with some of the more complex ones having 3, instead of the 1 to 2 we have right now outside of shooters having 3. So yeah, I'd say I overall agree. Probably not a hot take, but I do think the post-game content is unnecessarily grindy. I don't feel like I should have been below the recommended level for the secret boss when I completed all the content in the game up to that point. I kinda get where you're coming from here, but I think progression is just a lot less linear after level 50. Like, the way you level up your build and weapon and what you can be prepared to do can go far beyond your normal level, since leveling up after level 50 is really just giving you only a tiny bit of stuff. That said, my experience also made it kinda hard to tell because I did play all the levels and also grinded a lot for fun, and by the time I went to do the 100 floors, I ended up being a little bit over-leveled for them. So I didn't have the experience that most people did tackling those floors, and that might be fair. I'm not sure if the difficulty is or isn't scaled properly at that point, and I could see it being too high at a certain level. I think, in all honesty, the devs probably just wanted the highest difficulty for the secret boss at floor 100 to be danger level 100 because number makes sense. Raiders is a better introduction to Splatoon than the numbered games. A new player doesn't have to understand Turf, Anarchy, Splatfest, previous lore, protagonists, and multiplayer systems. They can just jump in and learn. Okay, I have a lot of opinions on this. First off, I don't think new players need to understand a bunch of the things you're previously describing. I don't think they need to know how all this stuff works. They can learn as they play through the game. That is kind of part of the experience to me. And while Raiders is a good introduction to the series, knowing what Splatoon Raiders is like, and only Raiders, is not anywhere near the full Splatoon experience. Raiders is one very small part, and the mainline games give you a lot more different parts. Maybe people who get into Raiders and like Raiders might not have experienced what their favorite part of Splatoon is if that's the only game they played. That also might not matter though. If Raiders is the game that gets you to try out other Splatoon games, then it kind of accomplishes its goal. Personally, I think the mainline games are a bad entry, not because of all these systems that they have, but because of how restricted the player is going through them. Limited weapon unlocks, restrictive kit systems, and stuff like that. So I guess I do agree that Raiders is the better introduction, but just not exactly for the reasons you're listing. There should be an option that lets you replay stages with the difficulty of your choice beyond level 80. Yeah, I really wish that was how it worked, because once you get past a certain point, the bottomless floors are really the only main challenge, and there is way more level variety elsewhere, so being able to just play a level at whatever level I want, or at least like whatever level my level can cap to, would have been nice. 4-star weapons should not have a chance to be primo at all. Only 5-star weapons should have a chance to be primo. I agree with this because it is exceptionally annoying to get a 4-star primo. It is one of the most annoying things that you can have. Desert, the third major boss, has the worst gameplay design of a boss so far. It is next to impossible to get hit by most moves, and the damage you're doing is just a waiting game. Yeah, I agree with this. I talked about it a little bit in my boss ranking video. You can check it out if you want to see more about it. But I think the effect that I didn't mention in that video is because you have to wait for a weak point to expose itself, you're not really going to put yourself in situations of high danger. For example, when you fight the Flapatizer, you can be in a lot more danger if you try to attack the boss more frequently and stay on top of it. But with Desert, there's no reason to play like that, because you have to wait for the weak point to expose itself anyway, so you're not going to be taking any risks, and because of that, it's all down to how difficult the boss attacks are to dodge, and as has already been mentioned, they're not difficult. My opinion of this boss fight's overall quality has gone down significantly with time. I honestly think it's a weaker one at this point. The level design feels pretty lacking. There is an opportunity to use salmonids like Hero Mode uses Octarians for cool level design, and while there's some of that, most levels are kind of just defeating hordes of enemies like you do in regular Salmon Run. So I actually saw a video cover this more in detail after I made my Raiders review. It's by Particular Mushroom, or rather one of their extra channels, and talks about how they neglected secrets and platforming attributes, and it does cover some of the things that I found irritating, such as the ride rails level being particularly boring. I'd recommend that as a watch if you want to know more about this topic, but the idea of implementing salmonids into the platforming is also something I didn't even think about, like having to maneuver the stage using a slam inlet or something. That would have been really cool. I think it's one of the biggest flaws of this game that platforming absolutely got completely sidelined, and while they did bring in some attributes, they didn't use them particularly well. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened for that. I don't know if they felt like the platforming would have taken over too much or anything, but some variety would have been really nice. So yeah, I agree. It would have been really cool if they used the enemy design a little bit better. And honestly, it's made me want whatever Splatoon 4's campaign is to have a lot more of a focus on platforming. More challenges like After Alterna, please. And that's all the hot takes I had time for. Thank you so much for submitting, and I'll see you all next time.